Kia ora. Welcome to Conversations with Wāhine, brought to you by the Wellington branch of the National Council of Women, New Zealand.
Whakatanga te hau ki tūru, whakatanga te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kiuta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hia kina te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, CISO winds in the north, CISO winds to the south, and man, it's cold, but hopefully one day we'll get some sunshine and good weather in this place.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was raining cats and dogs today when I was on my highway. It was like cats and dogs and birds and bees, everything was coming down.
Well, we'll be politicians
I nearly had
after
to
the
stop. I
elections.
nearly had to stop. All the traffic slowed down to like 60 k's. It was so hard.
Thank you for that, Tama. Tama Potaka was the chief executive of Ngāi Tai ki Tāmaki. Before starting this role, he worked as a senior advisor to the New Zealand Super Fund. He spent more than 7 years as a general manager at Tainui Group Holdings in Hamilton. He played a pivotal role in many of Tainui developments in the city and driving results for Waikato. Tama has a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Laws from Victoria University and a Master of Laws from Columbia University. Tama was first selected as the National Party candidate for the 2022 Hamilton West by-election, caused by the resignation of independent MP Doro Sharma. On 10th of December 2022, Tama won the by-election with a margin of 2,433. Within his first 2 months in caucus, Tama was named as National Spokesperson for Māori Development and Associate Spokesperson for Housing. Tama is married to Ariana, and they have 3 children, Te Ria, Te Awarua, and Aorangi. So, Tama, what has sparked your interest in politics and what drew you to the National Party?
Yeah, I think thank you for that introduction. And, I think most of it was true too. So that was good. Look, I'm really whānau oriented and community oriented, even though I might have a few digits and initials after my name with degrees and other things. I'm really into families and communities, and the values of the National Party resonate very strongly with me. So personal responsibility, taking risk and getting some reward, doing the mahi and getting some treats, loyalty to the state and to the sovereign as the head of state. Limited government, so smaller government and big enterprise. You can't have a big government and only small business sector and small community sector. You sort of got to get them all the same size. Otherwise, government takes over and you can really get into a dependency state. So I'm really big on supporting enterprise and farming, the rural sector in rural towns and cities like Hamilton. And where I was from, which is down the line in a place called Rangitike, on the other side of Taihape. So those things are really big drivers and values of my life. Growing up in a whānau that focused on education, both our parents were teachers, they were farmers. They were big on supporting the community in the marae and helping young people and old people. So I remember my dad used to, before all the food revolution took place and all the food recovery, my dad was doing that 25 years ago. Going around to New Worlds and countdowns and collecting food and helping older people or people who are sort of down and out and supporting them. So I'd go out with them when I was home on holidays or doing other things and just go and see the types of manaakitanga or care that he showed for people. And back then, if you got caught doing that, it's actually quite difficult because the people who were collecting food from countdowns and supermarkets were usually feeding it to cows or pigs or chickens.
Oh, wow.
They were getting rid of the food through the agribusiness. But he was regurgitating some of the food because some of it was actually okay. And so he would help people who were down and out and needed some support. But that had a few ramifications, especially for some of the business owners or managers that just couldn't handle it, because in that time was a little bit more frowned upon. It's frowned upon if you were helping people with food that was seen as sort of expired or not worthy.
Aye.
Whereas now you've got much more of an effort around food rescue. So I used to see those things. My mum and dad used to help a lot of people with some issues, physical or mental health and well-being, and young kids who were trying to do something with their lives. But also young men. I remember there was something probably before your guys' time called an Access and PEP, and it was sort of trying to get young people into work, especially big groups of young Māori or young Pākehā men that was sort of 16 to 25. And my dad and mum used to try and help them out, get them a few jobs for a couple of weeks on the farm. I'm not talking about one or two, I'm talking about 20 kids. So I saw that, and I saw that notion of community. And when I left school, that was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I sort of was deciding I was either going to become a judge or a politician. And I went on quite an interesting journey and doing a lot of things, but ended up having the opportunity to put my hand up for the National Party, whose values are very similar to mine, very close alignment. And then I got the candidacy for Hamilton West, went through the election and won. Although a lot of people were very, very surprised, number one, that I did it, and number two, that I did it with National. But most of the people that are very close to me, whether or not that's my friends or my family, knew that I was going to do something.
Awesome.
Would have been much easier, much more. There's much less, what I call it. Well, I think different things have different risks and rewards. And politics can be a game where there's a lot of risk and not a lot of reward. But it can also be a space where if you work together with people and you find solutions and pathways, there can be massive reward for the community and for the people around you.
Yeah, and it's really cool to hear how what your parents were doing when you were a child is what actually impacted you to go down this line.
Huge. My parents are huge. Like, people ask me, who are your role models? And my parents. And, I was fortunate because my parents were together, and they were really community active people. And they really wanted to do something for people, whether or not that's refurbishing the marae or helping kids go on AFS programs overseas. And I used to always be selling raffles for my father, doing something. And so I got a lot of no's when I was young. I got used to getting told no or something worse. We used to call them the PFOs, the PFO letters. But I used to have to go around and sell things or try and get people to buy a raffle ticket. And that, so no, sometimes people say yes, and like, you want 1 or 10.
That's what creates resilience,
one party vote, one candidate vote.
Yeah.
10 votes. So, that's the sort of lifestyle that I had out in rural New Zealand. And then, of course, I went to school and I went, through quite a range of different jobs and experiences. DJ one day in a Māori radio station in Wellington while I was at varsity, and then all of a sudden I was an attorney in New York City, just at the bar and passed it, and I was like, something out of the John Grisham novel. So it was like that. That's what my life's been, and I've had the fortune, the great privilege to be supported in that by my parents and others, but also people around me who've said, hey, we'll help you get along the way. And there's always people who try and drag you down, but you've just got to surround yourself with good people, and you support good people too, and support people who want to make a change in their lives.
Yeah, it's all about community.
Ultimately, that's what we say. It's all about whānau.
Right, yeah. So you've been in Parliament for less than a year, and you replaced Labour MP Gaurav Sharma, who had the Hamilton West seat prior to you.
Yeah.
A lot of people know why he's not in Parliament anymore, but as well as only being in Parliament for less than a year, how fast have you had to learn the ropes, given that you're campaigning again only 9 months into the job?
Yeah, well, my sole job was to provide a strong voice for the people of Hamilton West, and that's what I campaigned on, and to reinstate the voice of Hamilton West, because it had gone missing, to be fair, with Dr. Sharma. That voice for Hamilton West had gone missing. And when I was elected, I started, straight away liaising with and engaging with particularly whānau and businesses that had gone under the stresses of violence and ramraids, but also others who are trying to do positive things in the community, like a guy called Thomas Nabs, who runs a club up at Tukuwairua for young kids between the ages of, say, 14 and 20, down at Fraser Tech Club, him and his crew. They've got something called the Water Boy, but they also promote a program which re-engages youths into a pathway of hope in their life. And these types of programs like this exist in Hamilton. People might be looking at up to 10 or 20 or 40 people often young people, just to get them engaged. I'd go and visit them and listen to their concerns and find out what they're doing. So maybe in the future, or now and in the future, I can somehow channel some energy or resource or support towards those types of positive, constructive youth training and youth empowerment programs. So getting my feet under the desk is just understanding the ropes, how the National Party works, which is probably different to the other parties, how Parliament works, how representing the electorate works, and you sort of got to get around and see different types of people. You can't just go and see all the athletes, or you could just go and see everyone who runs a business at Centre Place. You've got to see as many people as you can to understand what's the vibe of the people, where are the roadblocks, where are their, what do they call them in the stores, fat blocks, where can you unhinge those and get them out of the system so things can keep flowing and keep working? And sometimes I can influence that, sometimes I can't. So a great example is the closure of the Norton Countdown. That was absolutely disappointing and disturbing, because all of a sudden you have a supermarket of scale in that area and everyone has to drive 3 or 5 k's to Dinsdale to Upper Old Town. And that's quite hard, especially if you've got a car and you can't go online shopping, because 25% of people out there got broadband. So trying to lobby and advocate for the countdown to stay, and if it did leave, which is what happened, trying to advocate for a new supermarket to come there, and in that breath, watch this space.
Oh, thanks for that.
It's an interesting one, really, because if we bring in more supermarket chains, then food prices will go down anyway, simply for the competitive aspect of it. But there are so many rural communities that are really struggling with only one supermarket.
Yeah, that's right. And, they get squeezed, the suppliers get really squeezed by the duopoly that's in place. They hold people to contracts that are quite difficult to supply on. And one of the most unfortunate things I think we've seen in the last 50 years, 60 years in New Zealand is just the deterioration of people growing their own food.
Mm.
And that's something that we really should encourage more. That's what I think anyway. I know I try and grow food and I don't look after them well enough. So all of a sudden I pick down a veggie can on Heathy Terrace.
You're too busy looking after the people, right?
Well, no, you buy veggies, you've got to look after them. You can't just say, oh yeah, I'll plant my seed and 3 months it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
All the snails are in there and all the butterflies and the moths. And so it's something that I think about regularly, is how can people grow more of their own veggies, and in a careful manner that's not impacted by, like, a rainy day like today was just atrocious. That would have wiped out a few crops, a few cabbages. But just trying to get people re-engaged in that space, I think, is really, really important. Not only from a fiscal perspective, but also from an awareness perspective around the weather and the environment and other things. That sounded greeny left, I know. I'm a believer in that, in growing your own food. And my parents used to do that. So there's all these bright dreams, 2 weeks, and it's like, oh, sweets.
Have you approached the Hamilton Gardens for any kind of way that you can work together in order to promote growing your own vegetables?
I haven't, but I have been to a couple of seminars. They held a really good one at the Western Community Centre. Kaumatua from Rotorua came over. He's in charge of the Tapuia Garden out at Tainui, out by the airport, and between the airport and the Whakatane Turnip. He came over and was teaching people about their successes and failures in growing veggies, particularly kumara over in that area. And that was really marvellous, because just gave, 100 or so people that turned up. Oh, they had nice soup too. That was cool. But just an insight into what's going on around the country. And there's a real groundswell of awareness around the Maramataka, or the lunar calendar, and the things that go with that, and the ability to work with the lunar calendar in a manner that you can produce food. So and I think that's really inspirational for people and motivational, but it's also grounding people into a responsibility for the land.
There's a kura in Rotorua that are following the Maramataka calendar, and everything they do is based in Maramataka.
Is that Kotu? Or Mata?
Yeah, it might be. I can't remember the name, but we had a brilliant talk a couple of years ago, and it was all about enabling the tamariki to understand all about how the influence on the environment and on yourself, and how that changes so much. and how, you know, the Gregorian calendar doesn't allow for it, but also it was giving them the tools, and they were doing all their own harvesting, and it was quite incredible because they were still doing, you know, their westernized academics, but they were doing everything else as well, which I thought gave he kaya ko'o. So, you know, it gave these tamariki the tools that they need to survive as Māori in a Māori way, but also including that unfortunately westernized Pākehā way of education, you know, so they were still able to thrive in both worlds. But it was just really cool hearing everything that they were doing.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of good kaupapa Māori that not just for Māori, but for everybody. So much of the Kia Tonga there who are really good examples of that showcase how kaupapa Māori concepts or tikanga, let's call them, or kaupapa can have relevance for everyone. Whānau Ora is a great too. You know, Whānau Ora is a great kaupapa. I think the Matariki kaupapa is a great kaupapa.
Yeah.
You'll find that you'll go to schools around the country where kapaha does all the rage, and there's actually more Pākehā kids than the kapaha than the Māori kids.
Aye.
And that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and I totally agree. What's good for Māori is good for all.
Yeah, no, I'm right into that, and in the space where actually, if we can unleash or if we can release the potential within Māori communities, especially young people, you know, you talk about Hamilton West, 45% of the kids are Māori.
Wow.
You know, in Hamilton East it's 25, but in Hamilton West it's 45. And if you correlate the performances in school, academic performance, it's actually quite distinct between West and East. Essentially, East has an NCA rate twice as good as the West. The attendance rates are very dissimilar. You know, there's all these issues going on, and you could talk about equities, but all I'm saying is that I don't think that we've got it right in education. And if it can drive equality, it's making sure that we get the very best education to all kids if they want to access it, they can.
Yeah, we definitely don't have it right. And that's something that Kaiko I've been working with, and been doing some, you know, some sessions with Dr. Anne Milne and trying to do what we can, because we've got a deficit model at the moment.
School was hard enough. Like I was with Shane Naltai down at Road Street, I don't know if you know Shane, but he's a legend. Drives his Harley up to the staff room every day. This is the school where my wife first went to school, over in Frankton or Dinsdale, over that way. And, you know, he and his crew, he's got about 4 or 5 at Wāhine. They're out looking for all these unenrolled kids. There's about 500 up in Hamilton West, unenrolled. But don't know where they are. So they've found about 380 so far this year. Got enrolled. So just actually enrolled at school.
Yeah.
9,500 kids across the country that aren't enrolled.
Yeah.
There's about
it's heartbreaking.
There's more than 50% of Hamilton kids do not go to school regularly. Regularly is 9 or 10 days out of 10, but there's all sorts of issues going on. Some of them are sick, and you know, there's all sorts of things. And you have mass transition of a lot of kids in some schools. So at Road Street last year, he told me it was 168 out of 230 kids came and went in that year.
Wow.
You know, what is going on? Because teachers just want to help kids and give them stability. But, you know, they do the best that they can. But when you have a child who goes in and out of a school or 3 schools in 1 year, they can't put their roots down. There's no roots in that community or roots in that school. And the teachers find it very difficult to transition. And their Scottish literacy and numeracy is severely challenged. That's why we've got a view that we really need to deal with emergency housing.
Yes.
In Hamilton, you know, you've got 750 kids waking up in motels and emergency every day.
Yeah.
You know, there's $27 million got paid out in the last quarter for emergency housing in Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's $110 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute horrid shame that that's had. We should be all fucking embarrassed about the situation.
Yeah.
We know what's going on. We probably know what we need to do. We need to build homes, and we need to build them at scale, and we need the council to empower our developers and others to build homes. Because unless we build homes, you can never move those people into something proper. No, it's not just houses. You've got to build homes, so you've got to get multiple layers of support and supporting them around the Manaakitanga, like the Wise Group or like Sally's or like Emerge, and other community housing providers, maybe the iwi, like Waikato Tainui, to provide them that ongoing care. Now, not everyone needs intervention every day, but sometimes people need a week or a month. They just want someone to call in for half an hour. Say, hello, hey, how are you going? You need some help with something? Okay, you've got a broken tyre. How can we sort that so you can have a car to go to work? You know, all that sort of stuff. It does happen out there. There is some support, but I don't think it's sufficient or sufficiently targeted in order to turn the dial of our society and our community. It's bits and bobsies.
Yeah.
But there are some fantastic groups. The Wise Group's one of them. Wise Group's amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
So how would you target it? Would you bring in more social housing, or would you put more focus on an efficient private rental market, or a little bit of both?
You have to have housing across the spectrum, because you can't just lift Ulster Street and put it in another place, because it's the same sort of situation, right? You might have a better house, but you need a proper community. And my way of thinking is you try and get housing across the spectrum. So you have less emergency housing, preferably a little bit of transitional, some affordable social housing, some affordable renters, affordable buyers, market rentals, market buyers. You have to get it across, and you have to have a good mix. I'm not really a big fan of dense mass social housing together.
Yeah.
There's a couple of reasons for that, but it's actually quite difficult on those communities. And I prefer to have more dynamic housing in communities. So you have some who are owners, some who are renters, some who are maybe social housing. Now, that doesn't always work, because some people like gated communities and stuff, and that's okay, that's going to buy. But I think as a country, we have to try and facilitate those more diverse communities. If we do, that gives an opportunity for people to see locally and to, I think, incentivize people to get into that owned housing space. I think that's good for people. Others, they want to rent all their lives, that's fine. But I think it's good to have strong ownership as well. Because once you get into renting, you have all these dynamics around accommodation supply and everything else. So, great example is right now we pay $4 billion out every year for rental subsidies. $1 million a day on emergency, about 1.4 on RRS, which is essentially time order social housing, and about 2.3, 2.4 on accommodation supplements for mum and dad landlords who are essentially having people rent their homes. That's quite a lot of money, right? 4 billion. And it was 2 billion 6 years ago. Now it's 4. If we don't do anything in another 6 years, it'll be 8.
Yeah.
So when you think about those numbers, I think, well, maybe there's a better way to use that sort of long-term projection, take some of the long-term money and put it into proper housing now, some of which can be sold and recycled, because people will buy some housing, some which will be a long-term renter, because it's hard having, just everyone renting. I don't think that's a good space to be. You've got to have a good mix. A really good example of that is Waimahi and Weymouth, which had that sort of mix of 20-30% owners and 40% renters and maybe 20 or 30% social. It's a good mix. Everyone's got to have a chance to make a little bit of money if they're involved in the development. So the supplier, the developer, the builder, they all got to make a little bit of money, but you don't want everyone making max money, because what happens is at the end, it's unaffordable. And the biggest challenge with the land cost, if you get the land cost wrong, you can never get an affordable house.
Yeah.
So what we say in our policy is, council, come on, you've got to rezone land, and we will give you some infrastructure support to put in the pipes and the roads. But you've got to get the DC of the development contributions and the rates right as well, councils, but the government will put in some money. And then make sure that things like sorting out the building consents and the code of compliance certificates, make sure they get done in a timely manner. So final inspections 5 days later, CCC, and then people can get moving rather than waiting months at a time. With the social housing, our priority is get kids out of motels. There's 3,500, 4,000 kids in motels around this country.
Yeah.
It's disgraceful. And
It is.
And actually, I don't like pointing fingers at people and saying it's your fault, it's your fault. It's our collective responsibility. We've got to get going on it. And the best way to do that is build housing in all the spectrum, across the spectrum. You can't just build housing at that end. You've got to do it across the spectrum. That's what we're thinking on. That's our policy.
Yeah.
Just quickly before we move on, what's your thoughts on transitional housing? So,
Well,
people who have come from prison and so forth and want to
oh,
merge
that type of
into
transitional housing.
society.
Yeah.
There's some people, especially in my area, they have an issue with transitional housing all existing in a clump in one street versus them just essentially being spread out through an entire town or districts. What's your thought on that?
I think, putting a house in, we should be able to get to a space where building houses are very efficient, so you get a really good affordable cost for a build. If people want a flash one with Italian tiles and bidets and 6 toilets, okay, they can pay for that. But if it's housing for the masses, let's get it safe, secure, warm, dry, build it, but provide proper wraparound care. And that actually simmers down some of the community concerns. What the community doesn't like is when all of a sudden Kailua pops in 20 houses and no one knew, and it's consented and it's all go. So people have to be able to have their say, right? Otherwise, you get quite difficult community responses, and everyone's arguing that the value of their properties have gone down and other things, and you get quite a lot of tension. So the difference is when you build it in clumps, you can get a lot of more efficiency and cheaper builds because you centralise all the construction. So you've got to get the right mix and the right balance. Anyway, when we have transitional housing for people like prisoners and others that have come out of difficult spaces, providing that wraparound care is where the action is at, because what that does is it helps reduce the chance of recidivism and other things.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things for people coming out of prison is to be on a good pathway so they don't re-engage into violent or other behaviour and they end up in prison. And part of that is, of course, finding something to do with their lives. So it's not just a house, but some work. And some people are very open to taking on prisoners for work and others aren't.
Yeah.
But
like you said, it's that whole wraparound care because
we've seen start in prison, getting I think about some of the workforce shortages we have. I just think who's going to fix all these roads? I'm like, imagine if were involved. I don't know. This is an idea. That's not policy in the National Party, but that's like, well, maybe that's sort of stuff that
could be done.
Parties can look at.
Yeah, and we've seen what happens as well when prisoners go out and they're not given that support, and they've managed to secure housing or something, but they don't have the funds and they're not given any support and they reoffend.
The biggest thing for us right now, though, is the economy, and we've got to get that right. We've got to get inflation under control. Interest rates and rentals are just diabolical. Mortgage interest rates are, I think they were 7-8% today, and people can't afford that. So affording that if you were on 2.5% and you've moved to 6.5%, that's an increase of 380, 400 a week.
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
Don't know, because that's me.
That's you. But where does that come from? And
I'm terrified. December's coming around
because you're like, I'm going to go.
I'm a teacher. I'm a
mere
teacher,
Tama. And you're going to go out without lunch in order to do it because you need a house.
Or I sell my house and I go back to when I was 27 when I bought my house.
And you don't want to do that. So what we're saying is that there's a massive squeeze on. There's a squeeze. Now, for some people, and we've got a tax relief idea, for some people in those tax brackets, we're saying, we're going to give you tax relief. Keep the money that you earn in your pocket. We are not going to take that off you. Okay? Whereas if you have children, you can move it even more. You can save up to you can retain $250 a week. Well, that goes a little bit of the way to paying the delta or the difference between what you were paying 3 months ago and what you're paying today. What we have to do is we have to get the economy under control, and we have to sort out the crime situation. Those two issues are just brutal. Now, when you're young and healthy like you three and maybe me, trying to be.
I saw you doing press-ups on the project.
I heard you're the fittest politician in Parliament.
Don't believe it. Look, I actually have been feeling a bit low myself. I had to go for a bit of a tune-up this week. But we got to get the economy sorted, and we got to get crime under control. And that, through those two things, society starts gelling together again, because society is quite disparate at the moment. I've never seen it like this, actually. I've never seen the weather like this either, 18 months away.
Yeah.
So we're going to sort that out too. And,
You can sort the weather out. I will
Yeah,
vote
sort of
you.
if I can
regardless
sort
of
the
what your
weather out,
policies
mate, everyone will vote for me.
What do we have to do, you know?
The pipe voter of Hamilton West. But once you get those under control, those two things are managed, you're in a far better position to really deal with the issues that affect inequality in our society: education, health, housing.
Yeah.
Like those three things are just keeping a lot of people down, whether or not it's Māori, Pākehā, whoever. If you don't have a house, it's actually really hard to live. If you do have a house and you've got a mortgage or you're renting, it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's only those that are sort of mortgage free that own their own place, they're sort of going okay. But if you have a rent or mortgage, the costs are just biting into your pocket every single day. And especially, like I've got a house with my beautiful wife in Hamilton. This is the house we're in today. And, I looked at my rates bill and I was like, it's $5,000.
It just keeps going up. I'm
And
around
I'm like,
it just keeps
that
going up.
rubbish better be collected on Monday. So these things are going like this, but our incomes are like this.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. The income and the costs it's taken off.
Yeah.
And, petrol, that's shocking.
Yeah.
So if you were in Auckland, it was getting up to $3.30 or $3.40. So that's just all the major costs: housing, fuel, food. Those three things are like, and we have to get that economy under control, get that inflation managed, and hopefully have an influence on the interest rates by focusing the Reserve Bank on the band.
Yeah.
Instead of the band and employment, which is what they're doing now. They're doing both. And I'm not saying it's bad faith, but that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And that we think that that's an influencer. But there are other things like immigration settings, the burdens on people trying to run a farm. You put all those burdens on, that just flows through to food costs.
Yeah.
Because the farmer's going to make $1. If they don't make $1, the supplier's going to, the buyer's going to have to pay more than the end consumer, which is us. We pay. So all these things, we don't think the dials are in the right place. Housing is one of them. We don't think the dials are in the right place.
Yeah.
What we do think is if we embark on mass infrastructure, like building proper roads around a place like Hamilton, are you guys all in Hamilton?
Carl,
Wellington.
Okay.
I've been to Hamilton and loved it, particularly the lake, but not too much.
Yeah, okay. So there's a road called Cambridge to Piarere. Piarere, where's the turn off to go to Tauranga?
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous intersection. It's a T-junction.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to fix up that T-junction. Anyway, we are going to 4-lane that road. And it reduces all the safety issues. It reduces a lot of the safety issues because there's always people killing themselves on that road. It turns into 2-lane. We're also going to build a road or support a road to be built around the back end of Hamilton, and it makes a big ring around Hamilton. Well, you're saying, what has this got to do with the economy? Well, I'll give you an example. The Waikato Expressway, which is the big road that comes from Auckland to Cambridge.
Yeah.
When we put that in as a country, National thought it up and then started it, and then Labor finished it off, okay? You had the ability of people and traffic and logistics and products to go up and down that road much more quickly instead of going through Huntly and Nguruahi and across that railway over in Huntly and all through these little ditty towns. Now, don't think about Radiator Springs, that movie, don't think about that. So when you have that, you have people like vets who could do 2 or 3 more jobs in a day and still get home in a timely manner to their kids.
Yeah.
So you've got better mental health and well-being, but you've also got more productivity.
Yeah.
So what we suggest is you build infrastructure for productivity, like the on Wellington, the
Transmission Valley.
Transmission Valley is great with our projects, but Granada to Petone,
Yes.
over the top.
I'm
So
hanging out for that. Yeah.
fix up the Melon line. So we've committed to say we will do that. We will pay for some or all of that. And what that will do is it will enable better mental health and well-being, but it'll enable better flow of people and traffic and logistics. So those are the sorts of projects that really get our wheels turning, because what that does is that really drives economic growth and productivity. And all of a sudden people are feeling good again. And you've got, and the other little bit is make sure there's no more COVID. And then tourists will come back, right?
Yeah.
And tourism massively drives our economy. Now, if you have an example like agriculture, when you have all these costs loaded on people, doesn't matter whether or not it's at farmlands, who are selling paint that you paint on the cow's backside.
Yeah.
Last year was $11. This year is $24. Same paint. Nothing's changed.
How can you justify that?
Well, I don't know, but that's how it is. And if you're a dairy farmer, I don't know if you guys have been farming before, but last year the costs were $4.30. This year they're $7.10, but the payout's only $6.
Yeah.
So they're going to be losing money, and that's $6 before your interest is paid. So if you've got a big loan, you've got to pay that too. So there's all these twists and turns and dials. You've got to be like a DJ and move things. And when you need to go into the garage music, that's when you ramp it up. And when you got to go back into the slow romance music, turn it down. But right now we need to turn dials so we're actually back and dancing again and not falling asleep over at the bar.
Yeah.
And that's the vibe that we're in. We've got mojo. It's just missing a bit.
Yeah.
And we have to get the mojo happening again.
Yeah.
You don't do that when you start getting those settings right, and then you go and sell to the world, because we will only get wealthier if we export. We can sustain things, and we can grow veggies at home, and we can do things like that. Okay. But our wealth won't go like this, because we won't get wealthy selling houses to one another or selling things to one another. We only get wealthy when we start exporting stuff. So you might have heard recently there was a policy announcement about export education, which is essentially international students come to New Zealand. That's what it was. But that was a booming industry. I think it was like 4 billion, 3 or 4 billion.
Yeah.
It was booming before COVID. And then COVID gone.
Yeah.
That's both at secondary schools and tertiary institutions. Even some primary schools were taking
our primary does. We have overseas students.
Yeah, and those students pay, and they bring a different sense of diversity to the classroom, but they also bring some revenue to the country.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is, reestablish those connections and get that going again. And, we all hope, Kariki and whatnot, that we don't have another pandemic. I think another pandemic will probably happen in our lifetimes, but we hope that it doesn't. It's like earthquakes,
Yeah.
We hope they don't happen, but they sometimes just happen.
Yeah.
So for us, it's getting that economy moving again and twisting dials around education, health, housing, and sorting out the crime dynamic in Hamilton West. It's quite challenging.
Yeah.
If we can do all those things, then, we might get back to go.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we just slide in, and you basically see people at the exit gates going Australia.
Well, hey, I'm just
I have people from India in this city. They think it's safer in India, and they're thinking we'll go back because it's easier on our whānau. We came here 10 or 20 years ago, but now actually we get abused too much.
Yeah.
And we're subject to too much violence. And if you ever look at the ramraid stats, Hamilton's called the ramraid capital of New Zealand, but you ever look at the retail countdown foodstuffs, I think it's the countdown stats have said there's been a 600% surge in theft in the last 6 years. There's been a 300% surge in assaults on staff.
Wow.
This is just I think it's countdown, that one. So you've got all these dynamics that are really, in my view, interlinked. Housing, education, health, well-being, crime. And underneath it all, you've got economy.
Yeah.
You get the economy going again, some of those things, they simmer down. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but...
That's all right. If you guys can solve it, then I'm sure Countdown will be counting down to the next elections.
Oh, remember the Christmas countdown song? The final countdown.
It's all.
I find it interesting that the ram raids have been increasing, and obviously many of the perpetrators are children and young teenagers. Why do you think there's been such an increase? Do you think it was isolation due to COVID? Is that an economy situation?
Yeah, I think there's many factors, but certainly COVID had some contributing influence because people got disengaged with one another. People were trying to survive. But ultimately it comes down to individual responsibility, and collective responsibility. I think there's been a bit of degradation of that. So people say, I don't need to go to school. I don't need to respect that shop owner. That's why I don't need to respect anyone. That's why I can do anything I want. And the enforcement justice system is not tuned up in a way that we can actually process those young people and others that are involved. So just get wet bus ticket and go again tonight, sometimes on the same night. Like kids all ramride on the same night, bang, go home, get taken over by the police, get another car, bang. Okay, so there's quite a few factors, and there's not one cause. There's quite a few contributing causes. The issue that we have in Hamilton is that the police and the council basically know who most of these kids are, and you know what? They've got a lot of potential,
Yeah.
and that's why we say you've got potential, but right now you're in a difficult and risky situation. So we're going to help you, and that's why we have these things called military academies or boot camps. Because what we say is you can't leave young people in that space where they're risking themselves and others. You've got to give them a chance. I'd rather have them with people, wraparound support, churches or community groups or mental health and wellbeing support that can actually get them all not straightened out, but in a space where actually they feel like they're valued and they can be someone. Now, people would say, no, those aren't going to work. They're going to fail. Well, it's going to be better than leaving them to ramrade another place tomorrow night and cause all sorts of harm. So at least we'll give it a go. And we will give it a go, and a really good go, to try and line up all these support pastoral people around a group of young people, maybe 40 to 60 to start with, and get going on it. We can't leave them in a dangerous situation like they are. Like I know a guy, great guy, friend of mine, owns a supermarket. He's had a gunpoint in him so many times. I know another guy has 12, 14 aggravated robberies or ramraids in a year. Ham West might be the worst place for it, maybe.
Oh, yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's why they call it the ramraid capital.
Yeah, as sad as it is. So, hey, you were the chief of the Ngāi Tai Tāmaki Trust from 2020 until entering Parliament, and you were one of the 4 lead negotiators for the Mokai Pātea Treaty of Waitangi Claims. Can you explain to us what that entailed?
Well, the Ngāi Tai Tāmaki Nation, the Ngāi Tai Nation, is a small but aspirational tribe up in Auckland.
Yep.
And they have wide-ranging mana moana and mana whenua responsibilities. But the role that I had there was being a cadet for the chairperson at the board, so just learning, but also trying to channel the aspirations of the iwi into massive outperformance across investments, social and cultural regeneration, and environmental sustainability projects. So we used to do funny but really disproportionate things for our size. So one of the things that the tribe does is it looks after Te Motu Tapu Atakehu, which is Motu Tapu Island. It's adjacent to and tied to Rangitoto. So there's a big farm over there, and we would look after that and run it as a farm, and also trying to plant out about 150,000 trees.
Yep.
So doing that. We got involved with Will Goodfellow, who owns the Explore boats, and we're running whale and dolphin tours after we channeled through the Department of Conservation process. We bought a college, the land of a college called Maclean's. Maclean's is a massive school in Auckland. It's probably the best performing state secondary school in the country. It's out of Bucklands Beach. So that was a $100 million piece of grass, which for a very small iwi was, way out of our league. So, Kazi, hello. And they came with a lot of money, and we got together and we bought that and got some rent paid by the government. So that's now owned by Ngāi Tai and some other iwi. We were building houses like anything. I think we built more houses than Ngāi Tahu, Waikato, Ngāti Awa, Ngāti Pau, and Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei combined in 3 years. And I was sort of there and around because of the chairperson was absolutely determined to do something.
Yeah.
We also started running wānanga, iwi wānanga, get people reconnected with the iwi and with te reo Māori and tikanga, whakapapa. That was cool. So everything and anything that was going in the Ngāi Tai Nation, I happened to be a cadet for the chair and basically running it for him and for the board, or the boards. I also had the great chance to be exposed to business people and community people that have really supported me, but helped to try and channel those aspirations. As the negotiator for Mokai Pātea, my job is to help negotiate the Treaty of Waitangi claims. So like the other claim settlements that have taken place, there's always negotiators on the iwi side and the Crown side. And I was one of the whānau helping to negotiate the claim. It hasn't been resolved yet, it hasn't been settled or negotiated to a conclusion, but it's getting there, and a part of that is me being a team member as part of that team. And that area is from sort of the top of the desert road all the way to Rata, which is where I'm from, Rata, down by Hunterville.
What are your thoughts on co-governance as a whole? Is it one that could hinder us or help us, or are there certain sectors where it will actually work and others where you disagree?
Well,
No.
I think it's a pretty loose term, but we gave support to co-governance arrangements with the Waikato River Authority, where community, the iwi and Māori, Crown, and the council all agreed to do something to help restore the health and well-being of the Waikato River. So we endorsed that and we supported that, as well as a couple of other initiatives that we would call co-governance, like the Orake Reserves Board out in Tama Potaka, Basting Point in Auckland. Right? But Taranaki Maunga was another great example, which just went through a process last month, finalising the return of the vesting of the Maunga in its own title, like the Urewera National Park or the Wāhine River.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate because I'm related to some of those folks. Let's go and see that be realised. So those sort of spaces and places where it's natural resources and environmental and people buy into it, we're actually very supportive of that. Where we find it difficult is public services like health and water and other things. We find it really hard because we think that there should be one authority to get on and do things like in health. So the Māori Health Authority, we don't agree with that. One of the reasons why is because Treasury said it won't make a material difference to Māori health outcomes for 5 years. What we believe in is actually devolving resources to communities to figure it out themselves and let them do it rather than establish a bureaucracy than to be the doyens of things. Actually, Māori communities know the answers to the challenges that they face, and we're more in the space where actually, why don't we let communities sort it out?
Yeah.
So it could be, it could be like the Māori Health Authority. There's something called the Iwi Māori Partnership Boards. There's a few of these around the country. What we're saying is, well, they don't have any authority. They're just advisors. But why don't we give them some support and actually give them some mandate and support them with something like funding? And they go and commission the work rather than the bureaucracy on Molesworth Street doing that. Because in different areas, you're going to have different health situations or health scenarios. Some things are generic, but some things are different in different areas. Just like education. The education, let's say in the East Coast, they might have a different slant on education, which is basically make sure those schools don't get wiped out by the next flood.
Yeah.
You've got real localised issues that you have to contend with. And the main civil defence person is actually the Kura Kaupapa principal over at Tolaga Bay. She used to be my old boss about 30 years ago. Nori Parata, that's Heke's sister. Heke's sister. And then you see it turning up on the screen every 3 months because there's another flood, another catastrophe. It's like, whoa, WTH, bro. You're back on TV trying to save the country, save the planet. So what we say is that localism is really good. We support localism and devolution more than centralisation and bureaucracy. That's a different approach to Labour.
Yeah.
They support more, let's have a committee or let's have a new authority. And we're like, no. If people decide and give them the funds and they can go off and do it. And we can just monitor, get that report back.
Yeah.
So housing's a good one. Labour's really pumped up kind order and a little bit of chips. We would pump up chips more and less kind order. That's how we sort of see things. Yeah.
So one of the other things that has kind of been in the radar with national possibly co-governing with ACT is that ACT has said that they would scrap the Minister for Women as well as a few other ethnic and diverse ministries. But what is National's current manifesto on improving the lives of women? So we've been told by multiple people that National would not get rid of the Ministry for Women, but as well as that, what in National's policies and rollout could actually help improve gender equality in the future for women?
One of the big topical issues actually is the gender pay gap.
Yeah.
So, you guys might know, and the Ministry of Women's Stats will tell you, just have to go on their website, that the pay gap reduced from 12.5 through to 9.4 under John Campbell English. And then under Chris Hipkins and Jacinda Ardern, it's gone from 9.4 to 8.6. So, you can do the fuzzy math. But what it demonstrates is actually we might not be as bombastic or as assertive around certain things, but we try and do things that would create outcomes. And that's moving the economy and moving other things around. I suppose one of the other things that we're pretty hot on is health and well-being, and health and well-being of women. So you might know that over the COVID period, 50,000 women missed their mammograms. It wasn't good. A lot of people missed surgery. A lot of people missed checkups. That's the sort of stuff that would actually just drive at targets and try and drive at targets for women, breast screening and other things. So you might have heard that both parties agreed to free breast screening in 69 to 74. That was part of the Labour Party manifesto in 2017. Topics been done. So they've restated it 6 years later. It's like, okay, that's cool. Good on you.
Yeah.
So, we're actually really into targets and really into saying, okay, here's a target, let's go for it. And I think Chris Luxon has demonstrated as a chief executive of Air New Zealand that notion of nurturing women into higher echelon positions and trying to, bring the dynamic, diverse workforce through, but particularly with promoting Wāhine into roles. Now, you might say, oh, that's pretty fluffy, Tama. That doesn't mean anything. But I think the outcomes that have been, that were, let's say, channeled or facilitated through the John Key Bill English period, I think that we were living in quite a positive and constructive and economically good time. Don't forget, we started that in the global financial crisis. It was quite a difficult space in 2007, 2008. And John Key and Bill and others in the caucus and the business community and the communities of interest actually worked together to get out of that difficult space. I don't know, you guys are probably a bit, that was 15 years ago. You probably
I remember it well.
You might have been about 10, all of you.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I remember it very well.
It was difficult. Yeah. And we came out of quite an economic storm into a bit of sunshine. And in some ways, we're in a sort of similar place. We're in quite a difficult, it's different, but it's similar. There are similarities and differences, but we need to get out of the economic doldrums and we need to get our mojo back. And that's what we're committed to doing. And what that means is that I think that women will be far better off in a better performing economy. There'll be, better jobs, better wages. There'll be tourism and other growth. And women will probably lead a lot of that. It's not that, I'll bring these, woman pawns and put them into little jobs. It's actually, no, you're the queens and the bishops and all that. So women are already doing a lot of these things and will continue to do so and probably have an increased roles and responsibilities in society. Now, I know a lot of women, like my wife, she tries to be superwoman, right? And she is. She's awesome. But she can't do everything for everybody. That's the other thing. I've got a cousin, my wife's sister and brother-in-law, and a couple of kids over here tonight. And kids, the daughter and the boyfriend, they got 3 kids, and the boyfriend or the partner, he said, okay, my wife's cousin, she's a social worker. And about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, they had a baby. And 4 weeks later, she said, I'm going back to work. And he said, okay, I'll stop work and I'll look after this baby. It's cool. Okay, all good. So we did things like, the bill that Nicola Willis promoted around parents can take leave at different times.
Yeah.
And that was just, but all the parties supported it, except one. We said their own idea.
Yeah.
And that's cool. But that's the sort of stuff that we would try and do if we were in government and leading a national-led government. I know there's talk about some parties saying they're shutting down ministries. That's not part of our policy platform or our manifesto.
Cool. So, hey, we spoke a bit about your parents being kayako,
Yeah.
and hopefully you've seen some of the stresses of being a kayako, especially in the current climate.
Yeah.
As a kayako myself, I have concerns that in 5 to 10 years we're not going to have any more teachers left, Tama, in Aotearoa. They're going in droves to Australia and other places around the world because they're getting more pay.
Yeah.
And it's easier to live because, the cost of living, when you think about that sentence, is a terrifying sentence. So look, I want to know, what will National do to retain our kayako and ensure that they remain in the profession and are adequately equipped to do the job and are paid what they're worth?
Well, I did hear something the other day from Calvin that core and middle teachers were being paid $100K. That was a big surprise to me because that's quite some pay change from years ago. I don't
So
know.
we did have a big pay change a few years ago under Labor.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware, but the top of the scale for a teacher who had probably worked in the job for maybe 7 to 10 years, absolute top went from 73,000 to absolute top being 90K. Okay, now that was a huge win for us because that was a reasonable salary. But as we've just spoken about, what we've got now is we have got, as we've talked about, that whole change of the cost of living has gone up. We have won a tiny little pay increase that I will say, and if Chris Hipkins was here right now, I would say it to his face, is not a pay increase because it doesn't even meet with inflation. And as a kaiako myself, you've actually put us back again further because the top of the range now is it's gone from 90 to 95. And you think about that and you think, oh, a $5,000 pay increase for the very top, that's really neat. That's really cool. Doesn't meet up with inflation for what we missed last year, doesn't meet up with inflation for what's happening this year, and it does not meet up with inflation for the next 2 years, of which we've got a 3-year term for our contract. So although you're looking at those numbers from the top of the scale end, we've also got to think about the bottom of the scale end because I was 11 years into my teaching career before I paid off my student loan.
Ooh.
And when you think about that, I'm not able to earn enough to pay off my student loan in a quick enough, timely manner. We've got teachers that are coming out of teachers college. They're not earning enough to live actually here. And actually, you think about that, the money that they're losing to pay. And I know it's student loan. And yes, we get to study for interest free. But you can actually earn more on the minimum wage or the living wage than you are as a teacher coming out of uni.
Per hour. Is that on a per hour basis?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because teachers got to do other work after school and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's worked out at 40 hours a week. What people don't understand as well is that kaiako in New Zealand are paid for 25 hours a week. So we are expected to do whatever mahi is required above and beyond our classroom time. So that classroom time is 25 hours of contact time. And you've also got to remember, because I love this one, Tama, I love when people say to me, I get an hour and a half break a day. My 2 breaks for morning tea and lunchtime don't even equate to an hour and a half. It's an hour and 5 minutes. And when I'm doing duty for at least one of those, I don't get my breaks. And then, you've got other things going on, like sorting out, your tamariki. But so I think that's over a 40-hour week. But actually, at the same time, I know people that are working in banks and they're tellers and they're earning more as a yearly salary. And I am really concerned. I'm really concerned because what we do as teachers and let's be honest, the future of this country is in education, right? If we can't educate our tamariki to be the people that we want them to be in Aotearoa, then what are we doing? What's the point in all of this?
Look, I really empathise with this situation, and I know one of the reasons my parents gapped it is, they taught for 30 years and they got paid at most, I think it was 37 or 30, maybe 38K, right? And they really struggled. And the cost of living crisis that we're going through, an economic crisis, it affects all Kiwis, no doubt, but it deeply affects those that are on low salaries. It really, really hurts. And it's not good. What I've talked about today is we're trying to fix up the economy if we get the chance to be in government, if we work hard and we win the election. We've got to get the economic settings right. On the specific settings around teachers and the salary levels, I'm not right across it. I can't really comment on that. Erica's the spokesperson on education, but what I can say is we definitely want to give more clarity to teachers around what is expected of them and the not necessarily the conditions of work, but the expectations of what outcomes we want to see. No. So some people say, oh, we're already doing structured literacy. A lot of schools aren't. Oh, well, we're already teaching the basics brilliantly. Well, a lot of schools aren't. Mm. Oh, we're trying to catch up with these kids and we've got these 70 or 80 truancy officers. Well, maybe it would have been a good idea to use that money on paying music teachers or sports teachers because kids want to come to school for the right reason.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there's not a policy. I'm just saying that I think we've got our teaching the basics brilliantly, which will give a little bit more clarity to what we expect all kids to learn. We've got the structured literacy program, which probably many of you and your colleagues probably already undertake. And then I think there's something else out there to help get kids engaged and really keen.
Yeah.
What I understand is that the issues that you're dealing with are much more refined. We had kids with ADHD when I was at school, don't worry. But I think there's greater numbers in that neurodiverse space.
Yeah.
And it actually has quite a demand on your time. So that one-on-one teaching that happens in many schools for kids with quite high needs, that's quite consuming as well. So we do need, I think, someone like Erica, who's living in it on a daily, and Penny Simmons, who of course was the CEO at SIT, to really break it down and be a bit more engaged with teachers about what you guys want to aspire to be and aspire to do, and make sure that our education system doesn't just break completely. Now, there are some schools and some teachers that I think do very well. So in secondary schools, you can see that. It's the faith-based private schools. The faith-based private schools and the state integrated schools, like where my daughter goes to school, she goes to school at Waikato Dio, King's College and ACG and Barradine and, Queen Margaret down where you are, Samuel Marsden.
But is that because of their lower numbers, Tama? I don't think that's about teaching, because if you look at the numbers, if you brought those ratios down, like our ratios are currently 1 to 29. Next year, it's going to be 1 to 28.5. I don't know if you know this, but you can't actually cut a child.
Yeah.
And I could try, but, I'd have quite upset parents. But, if those numbers are so high, that's 10 minutes a day for each of my tamaiti,
Well, but even if it was 1 in 25, it would be still 13 minutes a day. It's not a huge material difference.
It's better. It's getting those numbers lower. And I think that's what's important too, that people don't understand. And I just want to say very quickly, when you talked about that lower economic for our whānau and things, I totally get that too. And I know teachers are doing all right on the money stance in some ways, but people have also got to remember that our kaiako have degrees, graduate diplomas. A lot of us have masters and higher education too. So, all of that we need to be teachers.
Yeah, but if the cost for living or the cost of government, as how I describe it sometimes, were what they are today, if they were what they were 5 years ago, actually there'd be a lot of breathing room, right? And I'm not saying blame the government for the rising in cost. I'm not saying that, but I think the government has to be accountable and be held to account for some of the economic conditions that we're in and the rising cost of living. Some people say it's the war in Ukraine. That's a little bit, but it's not most of it. When you spend $150 million having to think about a train track in Auckland and $50 million on a cycle bridge over the Auckland Harbour, and let's get Wellington moving $3 million on the pedestrian crossing outside the airport.
Yeah.
That stuff adds up.
Yeah.
And, that stuff would have been better spent in places like schools and hospitals.
Aye.
And that's what we say. It's like, why are you wasting all this money? We've actually got big problems over here. We're going to deal with these issues. So, that's the way we look at things. And it's different to the way the Labor government looks at things. But we should have been using that money to really drive support and outcomes in education and health. And housing's a bit different. There's a different type of funding for housing. So when you waste all that money, it's really hard.
Yeah. So with that in mind, will you guys do more consultation? Because is that where they've gone wrong? Was there not actually enough consultation with the public and with people to actually think, we want to say in where the money goes? I mean, that's the whole point of it, a democracy, right? So that we have a say. Yes, someone might be up here being the leader.
Yeah, usually what happens is that there's a manifesto. People were all made aware of that, and there's a vote every 3 years. Now, if the proposal was, no, we should have discussions over the budget every year with 5 million New Zealanders, I think that's quite hard. It's quite hard. Now, what I do think is that in the government.gov.nz space, there is a lot of wastage that could be better utilised, and we could have better value for money out of our state services. And that includes funding for critical areas like education, housing, health. If we don't get those right, one of those goes wrong, the whole thing falls over. And now, 3 of them have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And so we've got a real cascade of quite seismic problems. So, and I'm not really across it as much as Erica and Penny. They're across it more. So that's all I can really say, Jenna. But I do empathise with your situation, and we care very deeply about the plight of people in the squeeze, and you're in the squeeze. You might all be in the squeeze of cost and income.
Yeah,
That's why we think we've just got to sort the economy out. Once we get there, we've got some breathing room.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but hey, look, I'd look at my parents, and they'd be working all hours making papers, and they just had enough at the end.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing.
Plus also the what was it called? Corporal punishment went out.
Yeah.
So you couldn't manage kids like you might have done in the 70s. You couldn't manage them like that in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
you'll see that in your classes.
What I've noticed for education is that everyone's been at school and had a teacher, so they think that they know what we do. But I think the concern for me is that in 5 to 10 years we're not going to have any more teachers left in Aotearoa. We're going to
we might not have any more police officers. Queensland Police are recruiting them.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you either grow it organically or you import, or both. And we think it's both for nurses, teachers, doctors.
Yeah.
I would ideally love just to say most we will grow organically, but it's not materialising that way. And especially if people are just getting paid 60K, but it costs 90K to live.
Yeah.
It's blunt, but that's how it is, I think, for a lot of people. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to eat this weekend.
Yeah.
That's actually quite hard. And, I was on a debate the other day talking about this, and people thought I was being flippant or facetious when I said, $4 you could get 2 protein bars. But, that's how hard it is. And it's different when when you're by yourself and you haven't got kids. But once you've got kids, it's like, that's very, very hard. Like when I was a young fella, 23, I live on tuna and rice in Cornies for 3 months. Just eat tuna and rice with tomato sauce, tuna and rice and mayonnaise, tuna,
Yeah.
And it was okay. I could survive, but I couldn't put my Tāmaki through that.
No, but also you were surviving. You weren't living.
Mm.
You certainly weren't thriving.
I'll tell you what, I was burning calories.
Yeah.
I was pretty lean, but I wasn't. And you're absolutely right. I was surviving, and I don't think we want any New Zealander to go through that. But every day there are tens of thousands, maybe more, that are doing that.
Yeah.
So the schools, lunch in schools, we support that, but we think it should be targeted. Like those that do need it, we should say, here's lunch. Those that need it once a week, here's lunch. Those that don't need it, you can actually make your own lunch.
Yeah.
Because if you save on those ones, you can feed more throughout this side.
Yeah.
That's how we think.
Yeah. I've actually seen that initiative in real life. I've just been around New Zealand doing some national testing for the Ministry of Education. It's called NMSSA testing. And it's amazing. And I was in Westport, and they had the lunch in schools. And I tell you what, this kai was incredible, was delicious, was well thought out. And I think their decile rating, well, I know they're getting rid of that term, but the socioeconomic status rating, that worked for those tamariki. And the amount of tamaiti that were coming in, they were all just there having this kai. And it was also, which I found interesting, it was also for the teachers and the staff. And the reason being was because it was a shared kai, so there was no shame in that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think what you find is don't lock it up, bud. Don't lock it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's cold. Keeps me warm. There's I think $25 million worth of lunches that get thrown out every year.
Yeah.
And we need to crack down on that, because that's $25 million worth of lunches that could be going to other kids.
Yeah.
So we just have to tune it more, tune it, and get it in the right setting. Hey, I think unless you guys got any more parts on it, I think it might be time, to call it in.
Yep.
Because we've been going for an hour and a quarter now.
Yeah. I was actually about to end it before, but what you guys started talking about was really interesting. So what I can do is I'll cut some of it for the radio, because we do have a time limit, and the rest of it I can just put up on YouTube and Buzzsprout and so forth, so you can get the full interview, because that was really interesting and I didn't want to interject on that one.
No, look, I hope you guys had a good corridor with me, and
absolutely. Yep, I did
You
want to
interviewing?
ask
Are you
you
getting
some funny
candidates around the
questions,
country?
but
Oh,
what's
you
that,
can,
sorry?
if they're quick ones, we can do it now.
Okay, all right then. Okay, well, in consideration of all the serious topics that we have been talking about, you are clearly a man with a sense of humor. So, can you tell us about the funniest moment you've encountered in your
Funniest
political
what
career
environment?
so far?
The funniest environment.
Funniest moment.
Oh, funniest moment.
Yeah.
What in my life?
In your political career.
Just in your political career. My
Oh,
mic might not be working so well. I've
oh,
only just got my voice back.
yeah.
I mean, apart from being in this interview with us, you know.
Yeah, no, this is cool. But you
Talking
always
about
get like,
chopping children in half, you know.
yeah, like there's a lot of what's the word? Defacing of boards, eh? Like you get called all sorts of names and epithets get written on the boards, and in the first by-election that I was in, I had to basically, I will sell your water was written all over my boards. I will sell your water. I was like, okay, it's already been sold in bottles around the world. So, you have all these funny things that happen with boards. Sometimes it's pretty tragic and sad, but you get face painted and a few mustaches and a bit of hair. I wish I could have that.
Some cool things. You get some Ray-Bans, like.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, there was what Scott Sheeran had the I'm Ed Sheeran, and someone replaced him with Ed Sheeran on his poster in Central. That was quite funny. Look at that. But yeah, we have moments, and you got to, be toe or be balanced, but you got to have fun and be happy.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming out to just give us your time and your opinion and your experience, and all the best for the elections.
Thank you. And who else are you interviewing as part of this?
Oh, it's been at least
few.
over 30 at the moment.
Wow.
We recently interviewed Nicola Willis and Judith
Oh, yeah.
Collins from your party. Oh, there's been a few nationals, actually.
Yeah. We've interviewed Chris Pink, Penny Simmons.
Yeah.
Quite a few. Mostly National Labour and Greens.
Cool. I appreciate your time and thanks for your total.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks for your time, Tama. Lovely to meet you. Ka kite.
Ka kite.